Okay, well, thank you both so much for agreeing to talk to us. When did you feel that Israel and Palestine were closest to reaching a settlement?
Oh, the 1990s, I think, most definitely. After the Iraq's invasion of Kuwait had been reversed, and there was a feeling that the old Cold War confrontation in the Middle East had now come to an end, and that, broadly speaking, the Soviet Union in its last stages, of course, and the United States were prepared to work together for a settlement in the Middle East of the Palestinian dispute. And there was a Prime Minister of Israel who had been a very hardliner in his earlier years in politics, but who became absolutely determined to bring a solution, Yitzhak Rabin, who was, of course, murdered just because he was going to get a solution. That was the most hopeful moment.
And how do you feel now? Do you feel that the situation has hope, or that it's actually very dire? Or if you do see hope, then where does this hope come from?
Kofi Annan used to say, if you work for the United Nations, you have to be an optimist.
Right.
But I must say, it's extremely difficult to feel optimistic at the moment. And the trouble is, there was a time, of course, when the international community focused a great deal of attention on this dispute, conflict, whatever you call it. And now it's become almost a sight. There are so many other appalling things going on, even just in the Middle East, let alone the rest of the world, that it's treated almost as if it were a sideshow. But I don't think it can be brushed aside like that. And I think people underestimate the amount. There's this unpleasant expression of the Arab street. I don't know whether there is an Arab street, but I think that actually there are a lot of people in the Middle East, probably not all of them Arabs, who do identify with the Palestinians. And just as there are a lot of people in the West who identify with the Israelis. And I think it's one of those conflicts that is not going to go away of its own accord. Sooner or later, there has to be a solution to it, but I don't see much sign of it at the moment.
Thank you. And I was wondering also, how responsible do you think that the current US administration is for the deterioration of the conflict?
Well, I don't think, plenty had gone wrong before anyone had ever heard of Donald Trump,
right,
when he was just the man who ran the Plaza Hotel in New York. So it's not sensible, I think, to blame him for everything. But I would say that he's sure not making it any easier to solve.
I think perhaps an interesting point to look at is the American political system and public opinion. There's actually been a strange sort of reversal of roles, because historically it was, generally speaking, the Democrats who were the most pro-Israel. And if you found somebody who was willing to be a bit more even-handed, it was usually a Republican. Now, partly at least because of the way that Trump has handled it, it's the other way around. And I think within the Democratic Party, there is now a great deal of soul-searching, and it's one of the many issues that is coming up in the primary campaign for next year's presidential election. And on one end, Bernie Sanders is saying rather extraordinary things, actually, about holding Israel to account for the amount of aid that it gets. Biden, so far, is resisting that. But I think it's definitely something to watch. I think that the Israelis, in a way, have perhaps relied too much on, that America will always be at their back, whatever happens. And that hasn't, I think also what happened in northern Syria last month has probably given a lot of Israelis something to think about.
Right.
Is America really such a reliable ally or supporter when it's being run by somebody like that?
How do you think we can detoxify the conversation around Israel and Palestine, particularly here in the UK?
Well, I think the most important thing is to talk to all the participants in this dispute. And by all, I mean including to Hamas. I think it is not sensible or healthy to refuse to talk to people. Do you negotiate with them? Well, only if they will accept some of the basic premises for a settlement. But do you talk to them? Yes, you should talk to everyone, in my view. And I think we may conceivably be seeing a change of government in Israel. That will certainly require talking to the Israeli government and taking seriously their views and their policies. But also, I think it ought to involve talking to all the other people who would have to negotiate with that government if there is to be a settlement. And that means, of course, the Palestinian Authority, but it also means Hamas and the neighboring Arab countries. So I think, as usual, it's a very complex situation, but it isn't helped at all if you start drawing red lines all over it saying, I won't talk to this or that or the other person.
And I should like to say that, I should have said it in the meeting. I agree very much with what Lord Hannay said about not shutting Israelis out of the conversation, however much one may disagree with them. I think that we can argue about the value of economic boycotts and sanctions, which I think sometimes have had some useful consequences. I think disinvestment in South Africa almost certainly did, as well as the fall of the Soviet Union, have an effect in bringing the Afrikaners to consider another kind of solution. But I think when it comes to bringing people on academic and intellectual and cultural exchanges and listening to them, I think that denying yourself that and denying them that is really a very serious mistake, and I really hope it doesn't go any further in British campuses. I think that we should be glad to see Israeli colleagues here and to have a serious discussion with them rather than shutting them out.